Every season, I see the same Warlock builds being used over and over again. That is just Starfire Protocol and Fusion Grenades, and I see the same title every time, best damage, whatever you want to call it, etc, etc, always using the same exotic. And this past week, I've seen a lot of things about Sunbracers. This build includes neither of those exotics. As a matter of fact, it's going to include my favorite Solar Warlock exotic that is extremely underrated, and that is Dawn Chorus. It plays very heavily into the solar side of Scorching and Igniting, and it's really fun to play with. Before we get started, just a few quick things. I want to say thank you, everybody, for the support on the last video. It was amazing to see. So like, comment, subscribe if you keep coming back, or if you just like the content in general. And of course, a quick word from our sponsor, and we'll get right into this video. As I mentioned just a few seconds ago, the exotic we're going to be using for this build is Dawn Chorus, which comes with the exotic perk Rites of Ember. Your Daybreak projectiles cause targets to scorch on contact, your scorch effects deal more damage, and you gain a small amount of melee energy each time your scorch effects damage a target. Our Daybreak projectiles will now apply 30 scorch on hit and 40 when we have Ember of Ashes equipped. Scorch effects deal roughly 200% increased damage inside of PvE, and Scorch damage ticks grant roughly 6% melee ability energy. With this exotic being the center of this build, we will be looking to apply Scorch as much and as often as we can, which brings us to our weapons. Now, I tested about 5 different weapons for this build and finally landed on one that I really liked, and we're going to start with Sunshot. This is by far the most fun I had with this build, but it only applies to scorched targets when it gets an explosion kill, which means we won't get the full advantage of Dawn Chorus, especially in high-end content. This is also true for our legendary weapons. These were fun, but did not take full advantage of the scorch bonuses, and it doesn't get the bonus ammo drops you would get when using an exotic primary. I also tried Polaris Lance, which was very, very good, but played more into the ignitions over the actual Scorch, which has a place in certain builds, but not for me for what I want to do with this build. And that brings us to my second choice, which is Prometheus Lens. This was great, as it constantly applies Scorch on hit, giving us the melee energy back from our exotic. The only problem I had was ammo economy. This is a special weapon, which brings us to the weapon I actually settled on, which is Skyburner's Oath. This is what I use for this build, as it comes with the exotic perk Slug Rifle. This weapon lobs explosive slugs. When you're aiming down sights, the slugs travel fast and straight. When you're firing from the hip, explosion is larger and applies Scorch to the target. This allows us to apply a high number of these Scorch stacks from a safe-ish distance and take full advantage of our exotic and the bonus ammo drops from an exotic primary. It also comes with the trait for the Empire. This weapon fires in full auto, does extra damage to Cabal, and penetrates phalanx shields. The full auto doesn't really mean much because we have the full auto option accessibility in our options menu, but the ability to do more damage to Cabal and pierce their phalanx shields is great, as we're going to have a ton of Cabal. I'm going to assume we're going to have a ton of Cabal moving forward throughout the rest of this year due to them being the main enemy from Lightfall. Now, of course, this is all heavily supported by our artifacts, which we are first going to unlock our solar and grenade authorization mods. This will just make grenade and solar mods cheaper, allowing us to stack a ton of them for whatever we need to use them for. We're going to want to unlock Solar Surge. Picking up a Fire Sprite gives you a stack of Armor Charge. This is going to be key in our build to have a never-ending supply of these Armor Charge stacks to spend however we want. We're also going to look at Flare Up. Firebolt grenades apply more Scorch stacks. Damaging a combatant with a Firebolt grenade spawns a sprite near them. With this unlocked, our Firebolt grenades paired with some subclass choices we'll go over in a moment will apply 50 stacks of Scorch, which puts us halfway to an ignition. Also, getting a Fire Sprite anytime we damage a target with our Firebolt pairs very nicely with the Solar Surge mod we just talked about. And finally, we have Rain of Firebolts, which gives us an extra charge of Firebolt grenades. With this extra charge, we can apply more Scorch and cause an ignition when we hit targets back to back with them, which can now stun unstoppable champions. This, in combination with our class setup, only increases our potency with our Firebolts, so for that we need to take Touch of Flame. Your healing, solar, Firebolt, and fusion grenades have enhanced functionality. Our Firebolt grenades will have increased target search radius and maximum target count. This will allow our Firebolts to hit more targets, spreading that Scorch to more targets, as well as it making it easier to hit those targets with the increased range on them. I also ran Icarus Dash, dodge quickly while airborne. While Heat Rises is active, you have an additional dodge. While airborne, rapidly defeating targets with your super or weapon grants Cure to you. I ran this only because I am not a huge fan of Heat Rises. I like the extra mobility that Icarus Dash gives me, but if you would rather run Heat Rises, then by all means go for it. It still works very, very well for this build. Moving on to the fragments included in this build, we have Ember of Mercy. When you revive an ally, you and other nearby allies gain restoration. Picking up a fire sprite grants restoration with a +10 to resilience. The two things we're really taking from this is the restoration upon picking up a fire sprite and the +10 to resilience. Now, if you have any other form of restoration before picking this up, it will reset you back down to 2 seconds of restoration. But with the amount of fire sprites we will make with this build, that will not be a problem. We're also going to take a look at Ember of Char. Your solar ignition spreads Scorch to affected targets with a +10 to discipline. Now, the main point of this build is to mostly apply a ton of Scorch, but that will lead to ignitions happening all the time. So when we do cause them, any target near the ignition that gets hit will now become scorched themselves and could very well lead to a chain of ignitions. Ember of Searing, defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a fire sprite with a +10 to recovery. Once again, we will scorch just about everything we look at, so these will be easy fire sprites to give us restoration, armor charge stacks, and grenade energy, as that's what fire sprites would normally give us when we pick them up. Finally, we have the fragment that is the main center of this build, and that is going to be Ember of Ashes. You apply more Scorch stacks to targets. This fragment is very simple, yet is extremely necessary for this build to give us those higher Scorch stacks from everything we've gone over, and to give us very easy ignitions to then spread more Scorch. Our armor mods are all centered around getting our grenades back faster and even our super. So starting with our helmet, we have Ashes to assets. With as many grenades we will be throwing, any defeats we get will give us super energy that will quickly stack up. I also ran 2 solar siphon mods to get more out of the orbs we make, but you can easily just stack nothing but Ashes to assets on your helmet. For arms, I ran firepower to make an orb upon defeating targets with our firebolt grenades, and if they die from the Scorch from our firebolts, this will also count to make an orb for this mod. Grenade kickstart, we will have a ton of stacks of armor charge to spend, so we can get a head start on our next grenade once we just start throwing them everywhere. Bolstering detonation, dealing damage with our grenades will give us class ability energy back. Since we will throw a ton of grenades, we will also have our rift up a ton, which is going to be very helpful in higher end content, or just having your rift up for whatever you need to have it up for. On my chest, I put charged up so we can hold more armor charges, since we're going to have a ton of opportunities to pick up orbs or fire sprites to give us these stacks so we can get more out of grenade kickstart. I also put some resist mods in here, but you can use whatever you want. For legs, I put stacks on stacks so we can reach those max stacks of armor charge quicker for grenade kickstart, innervation, and better already. Every time we pick up an orb, we will get additional grenade energy back and start our health regeneration. And finally, for our class item, I ran Reaper, so when we place a rift and get a kill, we then make an orb to get our setup started and help feed into all of it in the middle of combat if we need to. Again, bolstering detonation plays a huge key into getting our rift back, so we can then make more orbs. And I also just ran double bomber to get more grenade energy back when we use our rift. Again, bolstering detonation playing a huge part in this particular aspect. That is it for the build. That is all I have. It is a very quick, simple build, and it is probably one of my favorites, next to another one for a hunter that I've been working on. I've been struggling with Titan builds this season, but I have 1 or 2 in mind that I plan on getting out before the end of the season. Also, Grandmaster content will be coming to us in less than a week, I believe. Actually, according to when I post this video, it is exactly going to be 1 week before Grandmasters start, so I am looking forward to that as well. I'm going to get some guides out as quickly as I can. But that is the end of the video, build and all, including my rambling. Now, of course, like, comment, and subscribe if you like seeing this content, if you like coming back for more, if you just like seeing it, if you like seeing my madman brain just make whatever I can come up with and go from there. I really do appreciate all the support I get. It means the world to me, as I am continue to truck through to get to my YouTube partnership. So all the support that I've received, especially on the last video, is absolutely amazing. I'm in the works of trying to get something special for 1,000 when we actually break that threshold to get to the YouTube partnership. So once we get to 1,000, I'm going to have something special going on. I'm going to have more on that at a later date when we get a little closer to that. So the quicker we get there, the quicker you can all find out. So with that, I hope everybody has a good week.